they create a rough draft and they don't want to show the rough draft to anybody because it's bad. And so you want to do some polishing. But I think people get carried away with the polishing. So one of the things that I like to do is just show that rough draft and get all of the comments, because sometimes people have points that you didn't even consider.
Thanks, Joseph, for doing this. I'm really excited to dive into our conversation today. I would love to learn a little bit more about you, your current role with the risk manager profile.
I did my degree in Estonia, which was why I moved to Estonia from the US. Who can say no to free college? And I got my master's degree in actuarial and financial engineering. I actually applied to Pipedrive as an information security data analyst. The CISO at the time, he was trying to put together a team, and he had decided that I was a better fit for the risk manager role, more specifically information security risk management at Pipedrive, for a little over 2 years now.
And what does your day-to-day look like? What is it that your job role entails?
So I have also a couple of other responsibilities. So it's not your typical, I just manage risks. I do everything from the risk analysis, data collection, trying to score the risk, put some context around it, all the way up to presenting it to the executives. And then I'm also doing machine learning security. So I'm checking use cases, making sure, well, I guess it's still risk management, because I'm seeing, is this too risky for us?
Right.
If it is, then raising that to whoever needs to see it to actually make the decision on whether the use case should go through or not.
Right. So we're talking about vendors, or are we talking about something else within Pipedrive?
So these are the use cases that we're coming up with, the things that we want to put into the product.
Right.
Think about, okay, we have this idea. We want to do this with AI with our product. And so I take a look at those before, while they're still ideas, to make sure that the idea isn't too risky.
How has your role evolved? What is it that you're seeing that is different today versus, the first month or first 6 months at Pipedrive?
Well, the first 6 months, we didn't really have security risk management program. That was what I was hired to create. And he was very upfront about that. He was like, we don't have anything. I'm doing the annual risk analysis. That's it. And so he wanted to offload that capability. And so I went from, not knowing really anything about cybersecurity, only knowing about this concept of risk from my degree, to really getting into the frameworks, trying to figure out which one is the best fit for Pipedrive, doing a first run implementation of that. Some of those ideas were good, some of them were bad. And then we really formalized that after about 6 months of work, to where there was the proper escalation feature. And now I see the program in more of a maintenance phase. And so I'm able to take on these other projects, like things like AI and machine learning can fit into the picture, trying to help bring more information from more places into risk management. So it's a much different picture, building versus trying to make improvements.
Unless, you absolutely have zero failures, that's essentially is what considered success in cybersec, right? What are some of the things that you learned executing to set up a risk program? What are your key insights? Like,
the first thing is you really have to look for help. For example, for me, we had a privacy risk management program. It was small, but it got the job done. And so I was able to talk to the person working on that and pull some ideas and work with them. And we also then, out of that, came up with the enterprise risk management program. But it was about asking for help and trying to figure out, use the people around me to try and gain some sort of understanding. I had the same experience with cybersecurity. I talked to people, I asked questions that they were probably like, oh man, we hired this guy, this is such an easy question. But by interacting with those people and building those relationships, I was able to be a lot more successful than I would have been if I would have just come in, got my coffee, sat down at my desk, and worked for 8 hours a day. And then going along with that is asking for feedback often. So I think what a lot of people do is they create a rough draft and they don't want to show the rough draft to anybody because it's bad. And so you want to do some polishing. But I think people get carried away with the polishing. So one of the things that I like to do is just show that rough draft and get all of the comments, because sometimes people have points that you didn't even consider. And if you wait until you've polished a little bit, like maybe it's already almost too late to add that, or you get attached to some idea and you don't want to let it go.
So you spoke of something very interesting on integration with AI and ML, right? Being able to integrate that into the system. What is the vision like? What does the project look like? What is it that you're trying to achieve with that?
There's a few different pieces. There's an automation piece, which is typical, like your scheduling type things where, I need this risk assessment to reoccur every year because that's what the requirement is. So I should have an automation that reminds me to do that, so I don't have that mental load. So there's the mental load reducing piece. And I think this is where automation is good. And then we have this AI ML piece. And it's sort of interesting. I think, for example, ChatGPT is good. Like, I'm really having a hard time writing something. I understand the concept, but I'm just having a hard time writing something. Then I'll get ChatGPT to give me an idea of how I could word it. And that usually helps me get over that roadblock of, this is how I could word this. This is maybe what a definition would look like. I think a lot of assessment work is too specific to the business for something like a large language model to understand all of the intricacies of the business. One area that I would be really interested to explore is using AI to simulate cybersecurity events. One concrete example from my master's thesis is using genetic algorithms to generate probability distributions.
That brings me to the question, like, so how are you managing risk today? Is it on a sheet? Are you doing it on a doc? How does it work for you at Pipedrive?
Yeah, I manage most of it through Confluence. I write up the report there. Confluence is very powerful in that you can pull information from the pages into a summary page. And I think because most of our program is qualitative, this extra information is what you really need, which is something you don't really get from a spreadsheet. You have that summary information so that you have it when you need it. You can look, okay, we have this many high risks, we have this many medium risks, we have this many low risks. And then use Python when I need to write a simulation to do some more quantitative work where I think it's warranted.
What is it that you currently read on a regular basis, or what are the places that you usually refer to stay in sync with trends right now? And how do you essentially upskill today?
For cybersecurity, we have our lab platform where I can go in, I can complete labs. Some of them are about new vulnerabilities that have been discovered. Internally, we have a Slack channel which feeds an RSS feed into the channel, so I can take a look in there, see if there's news there. I spend time on Medium. It's not huge, I think, for cybersecurity, but there is a lot of good information there, I think. And then LinkedIn brings me a lot of my news. And then, of course, just searches for new documentation that might be out there.
Let's get to know a little bit more about you, right? What are some of the things that you try to do to, just blow the steam off and relax post work, outside of work? What are some of your hobbies?
One of the weirdest hobbies is I've grown since living in Estonia. I've been learning Estonian. I sort of always enjoyed reading, but I've discovered that reading in foreign languages is like this nice, really difficult mental challenge. So I go home from work and I do what is effectively more work. But I find it really enjoyable.
What are some of the things that you do in terms of your process for handling burnout? How do you look at having a productive day, and how do you go about it?
As far as like making sure that my workload is manageable, I really like the bucket analogy. You pour stress in the top, you have a hole in the bottom of the bucket. This is how quickly your body gets rid of stress. And if the bucket overflows, you have too much stress. And so it's not just work stress. You have to think about your family stress. You have to think about the stress from your hobbies, because they're not all just fun and games. You have to think about the stress of working out. You have to think about all of these stress factors and kind of keep them in balance. And so maybe you can work a little bit harder for a couple of months if you're willing to spend less time somewhere else adding stress. And I think that if you think about it as more of a big picture instead of just the work picture, then it's much easier to realize, I can actually take from this bucket. It's okay if I spend a little bit more time at work and intentionally give up a little bit this, or maybe I'm not so interested in chasing a promotion right now. I can maybe tone it back at work a little bit and spend more time on this other area that's really important to me. As far as my biggest productivity secret is to have those tasks that you know that you can get done for those days that you just don't want to do anything. So this might be, I need to organize a folder. I need to just go through and clean something up. I know that I can get these tasks done even on the days that I'm like, ooh, I do not want to be here today. Or, I only have 15 minutes before this meeting. You gotta have these little tasks so that way you can either get the ball rolling or you can still get something done even if you only have 15 minutes. And I find this very helpful.
How do you handle communication? And what are some of the challenges you face?
At the beginning, it was about asking for something that I wasn't ready for. I wasn't ready to present, but I asked to present, and so they gave me the opportunity. It's really about figuring out what that level understands, because it might not even just be executives. Cybersecurity people care about different things than the marketing team does, than the sales team does. So you have to figure out how the language of the people that you're speaking to. So when it's executives, they want to know what the plan is and what resources you need. Whereas if I'm talking to my manager, then he might actually care a lot more in depth about a topic, like the very nitty gritty specifics. But if I give all of that detail, which I tried to do the first time I presented to executives, it just raised more confusion. And so you have to be conscious of who the audience is and what language they speak.
What was your first reporting meeting like?
I remember the first thing that I presented was actually related to AI. It was GitHub Copilot, and I was really trying to explain this thing. I didn't have a recommendation going in as to how we should move forward. I thought that somebody else was going to present part of it. They did not, and I got asked a lot of questions that I wasn't ready for. And so, it was nothing short of a mess.
Wow.
I did immediately after that meeting, I wrote on notes like, okay, you need to have a recommendation. You need to be ready for these kinds of questions.
If you can share one insight that could go as a quote from you about GRC, about risk management.
I read a lot about quantitative risk analysis, and some of the authors are very anti-qualitative risk analysis, but I think that actually we look at qualitative risk analysis wrong. We look at it as we're assessing high, medium, low risk, and we're saying that's what the risk is. But the way that I look at it is actually by level of approval. I'm saying based on my research and kind of my perspective, this is the level of approval it should go to. And there are other people that check that and make sure, yes, we're all also kind of in agreement with that. I think that's the way to think about it. And it puts it more in the frame of the business, the specific business that you're in.